My name is Dahlia. This is a presentation on my extended essay for the IB diploma. It contains some insight on my experience with the EE, such as what challenges I faced and some advice I have for future IB students. Just some basic information on my EE. I chose to do my extended essay in history. My final question ended up being, what is the role of Western media in the progression of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? My advisor was Miss Zain, an IB history teacher at ACS. Here is a picture of my cover page containing the necessary information that is required on the cover page. I was interested in this topic because, firstly, as a Lebanese, I have been affected by this conflict. It has always been of interest to me, and I found this to be a good opportunity to further understand this conflict that was impeding my life. Secondly, I regarded it as an advantage to have extensive knowledge on materials that we were to study next year, in 12th grade, the second year of IB. On the right of the slide is the book the ACS uses to teach the portion of the IB history curriculum that contains the Arab-Israeli conflict. Also, at that point of my life, I was tied between planning to major in economics or media studies communications in college, and I was leaning towards economics simply because I understood it more as a major. I thought that by studying the media in this conflict, I could learn a little bit more about communication and media, which could help me make my choice. And lastly, living in Lebanon and so close to the conflict with a wide range of primary sources such as professors and those who experienced the conflict firsthand, I assumed that I would not encounter any issues regarding lack of sources or information. To come up with a research question, I had to first choose what I was interested in writing about, which I explained in the last slide. I began researching a little bit, inquiring about the curriculum for next year, as I knew I wanted to choose something in the scope of our IB history curriculum. I consulted my advisor, which is very important because she turned down a couple of ideas, knowing that I would have a problem with them, such as they were too broad. Then, together we created a draft question. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was structured and formatted in a completely different way to the one I ended up with. With this, I was able to start my research. My research and the information that was available to me changed the direction that I would go in and eventually my question as well. I initially planned to include media from both sides of the conflict, Palestinian and Israeli, as well as Western media such as from the US and the UK. But the information I could find did not permit me to do so. I couldn't find sufficient information on Palestinian coverage of the topic to match what I had found for the others. That being said, don't get too attached to your question, as you may have to change it. If you're stubborn like I tried to be, since I thought my EE would be much better including a focus on the Palestinian media coverage, you might not end up answering your question properly. Throughout your research, always ask yourself, is this answering my question or can I answer my question, so that you know if you should change your question. Lastly, make sure you understand what your question is asking before you write your EE. You don't want an overly complicated question that you won't be able to answer. Like I said, one of the biggest challenges I faced was finding sources from the Palestinian perspective of media coverage. This was due to such things as language barriers and lack of Palestinian newspapers and reports posted on the internet. You need to be able to identify these things, and if you're able to recognize that you could have such a problem from the start, it's better to adjust to that as early as possible. Time organization was also a challenge, but not impossible. Using the summer went smoothly for me, but once school started, it was hard to juggle all my assignments and the tasks I had to complete for the EE. Also, when writing my EE, I was often anxious about when to paraphrase and when to quote something. As a result, I ended up quoting way too much. But using the index cards when researching will help you overcome this challenge and ease the whole process of writing in general. Another thing I struggled with is understanding what was expected of me when writing an EE in history. I kept being told that I was not expected to be a historian and provide analysis on my own. I wasn't supposed to hypothesize something new that I had completely come up with as analysis on my own. And this is something who those of you who are planning to write an EE in history should remember. As this is a research paper, you are required to research extensively and make connections between the information you find in order to answer your question. Looking back at the EE process, I am most proud of how I chose to organize my time. I used the summer vacation for the most part of my EE, which was essential, I believe, to completing the essay well enough. I'm also proud of how well I balanced between my schoolwork and time to work on my EE after school had begun. Also, taking my research a step forward and arranging a meeting with the media studies director at AUB led to a lengthy conversation that really helped me understand the role of media in general. And it was also this conversation that made me realize that I truly did want to study media studies and communications in college. The director also connected me with a student studying media who wrote a similar report, and although time didn't permit for me to do so, it would have been a great opportunity to meet with the students and see if they had any local sources I could use to help me, such as the sources from a Palestinian perspective, for example. Lastly, I was proud of my organization during the process of research. I printed out around 18 sources and numbered them from 1 to 18. And this is sort of how I scheduled my working, based around how many I was to finish every week or every couple of days. And basically, I would plan on a week-to-week or day-to-day basis, which really helped me stay on track. Also, using index cards and writing my EE in pieces literally allowed me to piece it together later and ease the whole process in general. Advice I would give to someone just starting the extended essay would be to start as early as possible and start during the summer vacation, as later on when school starts, you really will wish you had. Not using your vacation wisely will mean you won't do either your schoolwork or your EE well enough if you leave it for when school starts. And secondly, research well when before you settle on a topic, so that you know what direction you want to go in. Make sure it's something that you're interested in because that really will help you do much better. Also, consider all the challenges that you could foresee before, such as the one I faced, like the lack of Palestinian media sources, as this could save you a lot of trouble, and could help you form your question better at the beginning and not waste time later. Lastly, consider your advisor to an extent when picking your subject, especially if you're tied between two subjects. Because you know what type of student you are and whom you work best with. If you're the type of person who needs someone to keep them on track, consider choosing the subject that will provide you with an advisor who will do so. On the other hand, if you work best when left alone to make decisions and only seeking help when desperately needing some, consider that too. The last thing I want to share with you is that the EE is a well-known and respected piece of work. You can mention it in your college essay if you want to express your interest in a certain subject. Some people even share their EEs during job interviews for internships. And lastly, you should have fun with the EE. Pick something you're interested in and something you'll enjoy learning about.